Fair warning, this guide could probably be retitled How to PvP with Slow CPS Using Strategy and a Complete and Total Lack of Ethics, and it would still be fairly accurate. You've been warned, I'm no longer responsible. This guide uses all the quote-unquote scummiest and noobiest tactics around that everyone dismisses for being too dumb to walk, but after some testing I've done, I've realized they can actually be incredibly effective in the hands of a competent player. This style of PvP relies more on thinking and planning than CPS and pure PvP skill, but I found it's effective for someone who doesn't really want to invest dozens of hours into clicking techniques for a block game. If you're watching this, I'm going to assume you know how to play Minecraft. I'm not going to be going over how to strafe and the very basic parts of PvP, although I do want to quickly touch on when to do certain techniques before getting into the later, more morally questionable parts of the guide, because I find often that a whole lot of people misuse stuff like block hitting and W tapping when it doesn't even make any sense to. This is the second part in a series on how to use strategy to win Bed Wars, and this part will focus more on when to use specific techniques. Let's start with W tapping, literally just quickly letting go of your W key to reset your sprint. This is a pretty important part of PvP, and using it properly can help you extend combos and increase the knockback you deal. But a lot of people seem to do it when it just isn't necessary or even helpful. In fact, W tapping can actually even be counterproductive in certain situations. A lot of people overhype it, but to massively simplify, it's not something you always want to use, but you want to use it when you want to increase the amount of knockback you deal. Block hitting is similar to W tapping in that you can do it once to reset your sprint, but it can also be used to reduce damage. In both of these scenarios, with block hitting and W tapping, my best advice is to think about what you want to accomplish and choose a technique to help with that, rather than always trying to use your preferred method of W tapping, block hitting, whatever. Let's go over some examples of what each technique is best at, when you want to use them, and when you don't want to use them. To put in the simplest terms possible, you want to W tap whenever you want to increase the amount of knockbacks an enemy takes. This is why people say W tapping extends combos, but you have to make sure you do it at the right time. By default, you move faster towards an enemy and you can knock them back, so W tapping helps make that more even, but you don't always want to W tap at the start of a combo, as that can sometimes just send the enemy out of combo range and prevent you from getting the combo in the first place. Another time you'll want to W tap is if you're trying to knock an opponent off a cliff. Although, be sure not to overdo it if you're also in danger of being knocked off, because W tapping will decrease your acceleration and can be risky. Be careful with this, as a lot of people forget to strafe when they W tap, so notice how you react yourself and work on improving that to make sure you hit your enemy off and not vice versa. Block hitting is similar to W tapping in a lot of ways. Doing it once is similar to W tapping, so you can use it in similar circumstances if you prefer it, but if you want to do it repeatedly, you want to do it when neither you or your opponent can be knocked off or strafe easily, and it's just a flat-out damage roll. There are few occasions when block hitting is truly the best solution, so a lot of people will just tell you not to, but there are always times when it is best to block hit, which you'll find with practice. There's never any technique that you'll never want to do. Now you know when to use the major techniques, but there's a few things left you want to exploit to get the fullest possible advantage in Bed Wars PvP. The best PvP battle is one where the opponent never gets a fair fight, as he can never win from that. You want to aim to cause as many of those as possible, but while I covered how to maximize one-tapping enemies into the void in the first part of this series, this isn't the only way to accomplish this. Blocks are a great way to mess with your enemy's movement as well. Let's start with bridge fighting. Bridge fighting is quite different from normal PvP in that there are fewer options and fewer skills that are required to learn to become proficient at it. This means learning to bridge fight is a good place to start if you want to start winning games, but you don't want to put a ton of time into mastering strafing and the rest of PvP. However, PvP skill can still help you there. There are two main ways to bridge fight. One is the easier way, and it is simply to look off towards one direction when you attack the other person on the bridge. All else being equal, if they're looking straight when they attack you, you take knockback directly backwards while they take knockback to the side and off the bridge. The upside to this strategy is that it's relatively effective for how simple it is to learn, but it can usually be countered by any competent bridge fighter, and you're unlikely to get the first hit against many opponents. The other way to bridge fight involves using blocks to disrupt the enemy's movement. Simply place blocks in front of them right before they get in range to attack you to stop their movement, and either hit them off to the side or straight forward to start a combo. Bridge fights are not the only use of blocks in PvP, however. They can be used to start or extend combos as well. If your goal is to constantly interrupt the enemy's movement so as to never give them a fair fight, blocks are a great way to accomplish that. Always think of how you can modify or use the terrain to your advantage in a fight. So many people in Bed Wars forget they're still playing Minecraft and ignore one of the greatest advantages they have. Block trapping is also something you should do whenever you get the opportunity, as not only is it a free kill, but it will also slowly help degrade the other person's insanity every time you do it, and should be paired with some other tactics we'll see later on for maximum degradation of the opponent's sanity. A lot of people bemoan the lack of rod spam in Bed Wars. However, I believe Hypixel decided not to include them as a favor to all of us to make the game a nicer, healthier place. Which is why I'm now going to show you how to emulate the toxicity and annoyingness of it, but with 10 times more effectiveness and annoyance potential. Now, everyone knows you can buy a bow for 12 gold from the shop. What a lot of people don't do is actually do that. If you have excess gold in a game after buying iron armor, you can buy a bow if you really hate your opponent or just enjoy other people's suffering. Now, when most people use a bow, they're either a noob who bow spams to annoy their opponents to death until they win just because they're the only ones remaining, or... Wait, was there supposed to be a second scenario? The point is, most competent players in Bed Wars don't use bows. I'm here to fix that, and I'll be doing that by showing you how you can use them to emulate the PvPer's most loved item, the fishing rod. Now, the trick here is to simply start bow spamming them from a distance first to start off. You want to slowly increase their total rage and anger at you over the course of the fight. Even better if they're on a bridge at the start of this and have no way to strafe or dodge. Now, after knocking off a good portion of their health, they'll probably try to block themselves off to protect their sanity. This won't do. We need to continue our attack. Simply move slightly in one direction and continue your useless assault on their sanity. At this point, the last bit of rationality should leave them, and they should be abandoning their last shred of competent strafing patterns, and should now be simply desperately trying to reach you. Because the only person who could possibly bow spam this badly would die instantly if they could just land that first hit, that one first hit, and this is when you unleash the bow rod tactic. Yeah, that's definitely a real word that I did not just make up. Simply release one more bow shot just before they get into melee range, as you would with a fishing rod. Then, with their health gone, their strafing pattern destroyed, and their sanity long missing, finish the fight off. This is like a fishing rod, but 10 times better as you both destroy your opponent's health and real-life sanity. I am not responsible for any harassment charges or lawsuit you may receive as a result of this tactic. As Sun Tzu said, know your enemy, but if that enemy loses its ability to think, well, you already won. If you can combine all these tactics to never let the opponent get a fair fight ever, congratulations, you've successfully managed the art of being the most annoying person in every single Bed Wars game. And, as a fun bonus, this is also actually weirdly effective with no PvP skill. But there's one question left. You're doing all of this perfectly, never letting the enemy get a single fair game, but you're still losing. We need to start practicing though. You wake up, you go to school, you get back, you get onto the computer and boot up Minecraft. You join Hypixel, join a Bed Wars game. You start to hyper-focus, forget to drink. The empty glass of water lays on the side of your desk, abandoned. You lean into your monitor, eyes focused on the enemy. He's just over there. You jump, and... how are you still losing at Bed Wars? I've been practicing 4 hours a day for the past month. There's only so many hours in a day, but wait. Bed Wars. Bed Wars. Bed. It's so obvious now, isn't it? All this time we were only practicing when we were awake. How little time is that? We're wasting so much time we could be practicing PvP, just sleeping. There's so much idle brain power just being left on the table here. All we need to do is to trick our unconscious minds into constantly simulating dozens of Bed Wars games every time we sleep. That's how you turn the game into a simulation. That's how you get tuned into the game on the subconscious level. That is the key to Bed Wars. After practicing, you could become a god. No one else can spend as much time in the game as you can, because they have to take a break. Your breaks are the game. Start lucid dreaming to start controlling every possible scenario. This is how you can predict everything. If it's already being simulated, you know the future. You know the enemy. Use your dreams to practice and test different strategies. Your subconscious mind intrinsically works differently than your conscious one. It can come up with new ideas exponentially faster and weirder than your conscious one can. If your train of thought becomes too unpredictable for the enemy to follow, you've already won. You're facing a sweat who spent 200 hours in this game. Ha! You slept and trained for 6 minutes, solely focusing on how to defeat people like him. Go further, people can already sleepwalk. It's a known scientific phenomenon. And someone obviously has control of their body when doing so, because they can open objects like doors that require precise movements. You just need to start lucid sleepwalking, but in Bed Wars. Go to sleep with your keyboard and mouse in your hand. Once you start becoming lucid in your dreams, use it to establish even more possible scenarios in the game. Slow down time in your dreams, and you can train for 100 years. That is how to win PvP endeavors. Alternatively, you could just not fall off the map speed bridging.